Welcome to the Mexpreneurs Podcast, the podcast about the stories of Mexican tech startup founders who are building world-class, fast-growing companies and having a positive impact at a large scale. My name is Sergio Chavez. I'm a Mexican based in Germany, a tech startup founder, executive, and mentor, and your host. Today we welcome back Mayra Hurtado together with her co-founder, Dr. Sarita Kumble. They are the founders of Prelude Health, a Femtech startup based in Singapore. Hormony is the flagship product of Prelude Health. Hormony enables women to measure, monitor, and manage their hormone health and wellness throughout perimenopause. Hormony's key innovation is the world's first and only rapid saliva test that women can use in the privacy of their homes to measure their hormone levels with the support of a mobile app. Prelude Health has established global R&D and commercial partnerships, has received industry awards in Singapore, London, and the US, and was recognized with a Golden Cheetah Award at the Femtech Lab accelerator in London. Mayra is CEO and Sarita is Chief Scientist Officer. Mayra is Mexican, based in Singapore. She is responsible for the overall company leadership, strategy, go-to-market, commercial partnerships, and fundraising. You can learn more about Mayra and her professional journey through the previous podcast episode. Sarita is a seasoned biotechnology professional originally from India and based in San Francisco in the USA. At Prelude Health, she leads technology and product development as well as technology partnerships. Prior to Prelude Health, she co-founded Picture, a startup developing and commercializing miniaturized blood testing systems. She also held multiple professorship and leadership positions at universities and biotech companies across New Zealand and the USA. Sarita's mission is to empower women by providing them with tools to prevent disease and maintain a healthy lifestyle. I hope you enjoy. Support for this episode comes from Partnership Leaders, the leading community of partnership professionals and executives in SaaS and tech with over 1,500 members globally. We're living the decade of the ecosystem, and every CEO needs to become a partnership leader. Just take a look at the top companies in the world today like Microsoft, Google, and Apple. They have all become platform companies, and partnership executives in IT have been the ones leading these transformations. Partnership Leaders brings these executives together and is building a playbook to enable CEOs and business leaders across industries to transform their organizations into platform companies. If you're a tech startup founder, Partnership Leaders is the place for you to learn how to leverage partnerships to take your business to the next level. I'm a member of PL and co-host of the Germany chapter and have seen firsthand the richness and value of this incredible community. Visit partnershipleaders.com to learn more and to apply to become a member. Make sure to mention in your application that Mexpreneurs referred you so you can receive a special price if your application is accepted. Hello, Mayra. Sarita, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us. Great to be here.
And thank you for taking the time to join us today. So please tell us, what is Prelude Health?
Prelude Health started as a company looking into better ways to support women during the transition period to menopause, which really can start as early as 35 and last up to 15 years. It represents actually a quarter of a woman's life. And we realized there was a huge need and opportunity to support women through this transition, which we are doing through tech and biotech.
So are women typically left on their own during this transition period? Like, is there no support? I'm super curious to understand more about this.
It's only up till the last 5 years that this has been brought to attention to the world stage. Otherwise, before that, women were pretty much left to themselves. And even now, there's stuff being done, but not enough. And I think that's where we wanted to step in and provide a tool for women to at least be able to understand what they're going through and that they're not alone.
And this impacts every woman worldwide, or is this something that only a few women experience? Like, how big is this issue?
Perimenopause and menopause is universal. It's not a choice. And it's also not a disease. It's simply a stage of life. And that's why there is no cure per se, or there's no specific treatment, because every woman can experience it in different ways. And that's where the challenge comes in. We have seen it as something you must bear. There's a lot of myths, there's a lot of shame surrounding it, which has stopped us from looking for solutions for women going through this stage. And the other thing I should mention is we have to consider that our body, it's like an orchestra. hence the name Prelude. And hormones are these conductors that are helping this amazing orchestra do so many functions. It could be everything from your side, your brain, your bones, your skin. So when these conductors or hormones are out of tune, they start sending signals that you have to look at something. And that's when you start seeing different symptoms. Unfortunately, because we are not paying attention to those symptoms, because simply women, we are right now focusing at that stage in our careers, our family, our community, we overlook our own health. So that means that they not only go with overlooked symptoms and that disrupt their life, these symptoms or alarm bells are pointing out to potential issues in the future that could lead to chronic disease like Alzheimer, osteoporosis, diabetes. Beyond just managing the symptoms, these are red lights or red flags that are telling us you need to take care of yourself, look at what your body is telling you, and then address them.
So, how did you realize this need for these solution for women? Have you experienced that yourself already, or how exactly do you stumble with these big need and these issues that women are facing?
Yes, I mean, I've gone through the phase myself. And when I met Mayra, she was going through that phase, and she was obviously quite distraught because of all the amount it costs to try and even figure out if you are in that phase of perimenopause. So that area, the period between menopause and when you're actually your periods, you're starting the menopause phase is called perimenopause, and that's when things go, as Mayra said, the hormones go out of whack, and things happen which we have no control over. You think you're going crazy. You think you're getting hot flashes. You're feeling lost. You got brain fog. These are all different things which are happening. And previously, our mothers, grandmothers, they just took it as a natural phase of life and bore it without any one to talk to, anyone to ask about. So I think we did realize that we should actually be able to provide some help to people and understand what's going on. When I went through it, again, I went to the doctor and he's like, oh, it's menopause, there's nothing to it, carry on, that sort of thing. But that's not true, because there are lots of things happening which we don't understand. And it would have been nice. I kept saying, I would like to know if there's a test which I can do to see whether I'm in perimenopause or in menopause. How would I know? How do I know? And he was like, well, the symptoms tell you there's no need to do it, but it would have been a good tool to know what my progress rate was, how long it's going to take, what's exactly happening to my body. And unfortunately, a lot of doctors do not have the time or haven't been able to be trained in exactly what perimenopause and menopause is. So we decided that this would be a good tool for us to come in and try and help women at this stage and understand what they're going through, give them a few tests, give them a few suggestions, nutrition, exercise, and for them to get a better understanding of their own body.
And what we realized is when we were started talking to other women, it was really universal. Every woman wanted to talk about it, and every woman was interested in finding a solution. Keep in mind that at this point, when women start going through this, they're at the peak of their careers and there's no information. And like Sarita was saying, just to put it into perspective, the US is estimated in the next 5 years, there will be one specialist for every 9,000 women. If you can imagine that maybe a specialist can see between 1 and 3,000 women a year, and this is with an appointment of 15 minutes, just consider the waiting times to see doctors are months. But even doctors are struggling because, which they told us when we talked to them, 15 minutes is not enough for me to have a conversation, explain to them what's happening, and teach them the adjustments that they need to do. And then after that, making changes, it takes time. Any lifestyle change can take months to establish. So that support is very difficult for specialists to give. And that is considering that you can get the patient back into their consultation. The idea is, yes, we're supporting women, but we are also providing a tool to specialists to guide their patients through the process as well, and basically remote monitoring.
So before Prelude Health, the only alternative was going to a specialist, then going through some examination. And even then, if I understand it correctly, like these specialists may not identify premenopause. So they may identify, of course, the menopause symptoms, but not perimenopause. Is that correct?
I just want to say one thing. There are companies out there who are doing stuff before us, but the main distinction is we had to send the samples in, and you send it to the company to do the test, then they give you the results. Now there are a couple of things here. One is it's costly, and you got to send the sample in, you got to wait for a month, get the test results back. Number two, it's really one time point. And what really is happening to this period of perimenopause, it's happening over a period of time. So really, it's going to be very expensive to every day send your sample, every, thrice a week or whatever it is. So what we want to do is, or what we are doing, is giving the consumer the ability to test their own hormone levels at home. And then when they go, as Mayra said, for their 15-minute appointment, they have this arsenal of test results, which they can show the doctor and say, okay, I've done this. This is what my results show. What is it that you can, recommend further from this? Though I already have all this in hand. So it should be easier for the doctor to even get to their recommendations.
And that means that moving forward, the way that you're envisioning these is that women, when they get to, let's say, 35, will then have access to these at-home tests, and then they will doing these at-home tests, I don't know, once a month or every other month, and through these, they will be able to identify where are they and what stage they are? Or how are you envisioning then that women are going to go through this experience moving forward?
So these are not really stages, but it's the things that's a fluctuation of the hormones which happen through the months, through the days. And, say a woman wakes up and feels like, oh, I'm feeling, really stressed today. One of the symptoms is anxiety or palpitations or feeling, waking up with a sense of fear or sense of dread. Okay, maybe I will check my cortisol levels today. Cortisol is a good indicator of stress. So let me see how my cortisol levels are doing today. And getting those answers will help them maybe, I don't know, spend some time with mindfulness, spend some time with deep breathing, a relaxation technique. Maybe that will help them through the day. And, if they have a big day of, as Mayra said, they're in the prime of their careers, and you've got some big presentation, you want to be able to do it calmly. And so things like that, which will help. Also, having known what their luteinizing hormone and FSH, these are hormones which are the reproductive hormones, where that level is. So knowing that will be useful for them to know what's happening with their periods. Am I there are things which are like, am I going crazy? Is this what's normal? So things like that. So it's just something to help them as a tool, so that they understand that they're not alone, and they understand that this is naturally occurring with the body, and there are things that can be done to prevent people feeling like they are out of sorts, or people feeling that they are not proper frame of mind.
And I think what I would add there is, or the next question that could come up is, why test the hormones if you have the symptoms? The thing is that right now there's over 30 symptoms that are commonly associated with perimenopause. But different hormone levels and fluctuations could be related to one or more symptoms. So really it's kind of trial and error. Am I not able to sleep because of my cortisol, or because of my estrogen, or because something else? That's not the best example, but that kind of a way to explain it. Right now, when you go to the doctor, you're relying on finding the right doctor that will be trained on it. Then you rely on the doctor asking the right questions and you remembering the right answers. If I don't relate my headaches to perimenopause, maybe I would end up going to an orthopedist instead of OBGYN. So I would probably not mention my headaches to my OBGYN, for example. You have these two parts that need to come together to identify the issues. And then after that, you get sent to do a lab test. If you're lucky, because many doctors believe it might not be necessary because of the one-time point information. And then you have to come back to get a differential diagnostic, which basically means it could be this or it could be that. Let's try which one. So that whole loop can take months or even years. Women are during this stage are very commonly going to psychiatrists, which are then prescribed for anxiolytics or antidepressant medicine. It's a period of time where anxiety, depression is the highest. Obviously, this disrupts relationships. So we can see that also divorce rates peak at this stage. So if you're thinking it doesn't affect men, well, actually, it affects the whole family, right? Especially if you're not aware what's happening. So a lot of this has to go along with the testing, the health history. The recommendation is also the education piece to help women understand that it's a natural phase of life. And with that, there's many studies that have shown that once women are acknowledge, understand, and have a plan, their symptoms can go down to 50% or even 20-30%, depending on the severity. So just understanding our body, understanding that there's a plan for it, can make a huge difference.
And also, if I understand correctly, that was your experience, Maya, in terms of acknowledging or becoming aware of the existing of perimenopause. No, I don't think every woman is aware about these specific period, how it's called, what it means, no? And therefore, probably not everyone can articulate like, oh, I'm going through these phase when they go through a specialist. No? So they becoming aware that this is a period of time that every woman goes through.
Yes, and it's super interesting because the other day my aunt was visiting, and it just hit me. I knew that for the last many years, 10 years, 15 years, she had struggled with a few things, everything from a frozen shoulder, anxiety, depression, just many different symptoms. And at that point, we're talking about 10 years ago, there was not much conversation around it. And looking back, now we can say, okay, this is what it was. And she mentioned that she found it hard just being around people. People did not believe her. The doctors told her, oh, you got lucky, you were born a woman. That's about it. And then got prescribed a medication. So it is something that we didn't speak about it before. But now when I start speaking to many other women, they're like, oh, yeah, I had this and that and that. And that was my experience.
And what I'm also curious about, you mentioned about, if I'm not mistaken, you're measuring different hormones. Like, what exactly is the secret sauce of the solution that you're building? Are you measuring different hormones? Not only the fact that it's at home and that, let's say, women can do it on their own without the need of a specialist, but it's also the fact that you're measuring different hormones? Or what exactly is that like?
Previously, even if you do the hormone test, it was always set out and it's one time point. So the idea for us is that the women can test over multiple time points at home in the privacy of their own home, and they don't have to go out, because we have got a test which we have partnered with another company for, and we've got an exclusivity for cortisol and a saliva test, which can be done at home, which I think is something I'm very much looking forward to. I think it should be very helpful to women. And it'll be an easier test to do because it's just saliva. So this is something which normally is typically done 3 times a day. Now, can you imagine if we were to send 3 samples out for testing? It's going to cost a lot of money. So here you can do it at home. You can do it multiple times in a month whenever you're feeling a little bit low. And I think that itself is a very powerful tool for women for their day-to-day needs.
I think going back to a question you asked earlier is why saliva? Which, by the way, I'm so surprised. In Mexico, for example, you cannot find saliva or urine test for hormones. Everything is done in blood. So what we know about the gold standard, I should say, is urine, which is the Dutch test, and obviously saliva as well. However, the issue with, or before I mention the issue with saliva, I should mention the issue with blood. Blood shows you how many hormones you have. But some of those hormones are binded to proteins, and only some hormones that are not binded are available for your body to use in its processes, like take care of your skin, your eye, your brain, etc. So when you test on blood, you cannot see which ones are binded and which ones are not. That's why when you test on urine and saliva, you can see the hormones that your body has already used and that are available for you, for your body to use in these processes. However, saliva is hard to test. On one side, the hormone concentrations are low, and on the other side, saliva is dirty. I mean, if you think about it, our mouths have so many bacteria. The amazing thing of these tests that we're working with and that we are also planning to keep on developing is that you can even have a cup of coffee before testing. Following up on what Sarita is saying, right now we have cortisol and we have another 3 hormones in the pipeline that we're working on developing in partnership with our advisor in the UK. We have right now 2 urine tests, LH and FSH, and eventually we want to make sure that we have a whole panel of hormones that are able to give us enough information to provide a protocol for women during this period.
Thinking forward in terms of what the experience for women will be when they start facing some tiredness or some complications around these mid-30s, then they will have different tests that they could do at home, some with saliva, some with urine, that they can be using to get a full picture of what their current status is, no? And through that, have a much more informed and much more rich conversation with their doctor, especially when they go through it.
Exactly. We will have a panel of nutritionists and a panel of, experts as well as on hand through the app, which will help them also in the earlier periods. But if it gets, far worse, then they can go in and see a doctor and stuff.
And this is actually super interesting as well, no? Because you're bringing the whole ecosystem together. No? You're identifying the root causes behind the symptoms, and then you're recommending women to go to the right specialist or the right partner that could support them to cope with that. No? Because if our understanding is, it's not necessarily an illness, it's just a process of which they're going through. And they, of course, will most likely need support from a specialist in different areas to help her go through that process in the best possible way.
Correct. And just put fertility or pregnancy as an example. The whole process of getting pregnant, going through the pregnancy and having a baby is a very communal approach. So women work together, they talk together, they share their experience. There's so many blogs and communities out there, but there's also something that you talk to your mother, your friends, and once the baby is here, again, it's a very communal approach. It's normal, it's a transition, and we see it as such. Perimenopause is the same thing. There's now studies that are showing by Dr. Mosconi, which is a neuroscientist, that shows that actually the brain is just adjusting through every transition. And these are the chemicals that help the brain adjust to those stages. So during perimenopause, the woman's brain is adjusting to a new phase, like, for example, being the community supporter, being the teacher, being the master Yoda to the next generation, and therefore allows the brain to set that framework. But so far, because we don't talk about it, or we stigmatize it, or we put shame around it, we don't talk about it. But it's really a very beautiful process that women go after their fertile years. And we just need to make sure that women feel supported and they have the tools needed for them to take care of their health, and they can avoid future issues.
So now, please walk me through what's the traction that you've seen. So I think you come through this big opportunity to support women all over the globe. You've already developed an initial product. What are some of those milestones that you've achieved so far?
Well, we've been super fortunate. Like Sarita was saying, it's a topic that is very recent. At the beginning, we had a bit of a hard time explaining hormones to people, especially, and even women. A lot of women, like myself, we were not aware about the impact of hormones in our body. But then we started seeing all this traction and interest from the industry. We were finalists at the Women's Health Innovation Summit Asia last year. Then we were part of the Femtech Lab accelerator in London, where we were awarded with the Golden Cheetah for our development during that program. Early this year, we were finalists at the Future of Capitalism competition by the Leo Lion Foundation in London. Fantastic, where they're actually looking at projects that have commercial but social impact. And most recently, we presented at Chani Ventures in Mexico City. And next week, we were finalists at the Welfare Tech program in Connecticut. So that has been in terms of industry recognition, but we also have built partnerships with universities like Tec de Monterrey, Singapore University as well. We're working on a partnership with Nanyang Tech. We've obviously created an MVP and right now working on building the beta and doing a pilot as well of our test. And on the background, we also have research going on other tests as well.
And something that is important for our audience as well. So this is, of course, a health tech product. You cannot just roll it out and start doing pilots like right away. You need to go through different gates to make sure that it's safe, that it's compliant. It's not as a software product that you can just throw an MVP and start getting some feedback right away. You need to go through all of those precautions and things to get that. So the level of complexity to develop such a product is much greater than in other branches.
We are promoting it first as a wellness product, and then we would like to get it into much more rigorous work. But what we're doing is we're setting up a small pilot where we can test all these products for women. So we have, recruiting women to do a pilot study. And I think it'll between the ages of 35 and 45 to 50. And then we're going to see how these tests perform and what information we can gather from them. And I think that's really underway right now. And I think it should be done maybe in a month's time or so.
And adding to that point, just some interesting statistic. If you go to PubMed to look for research papers and you type in pregnancy or fertility, you'll get 1.1 million research papers. If you look for menopause or perimenopause, you'll get 90,000 research papers. So 1-to-1 staggering difference. And I think this is where the big opportunity lies when we're talking about these pilots and research, is that on one hand, we need to make sure, like you said, that the biotech is going according to all the regulatory standards. But then we also have the tech component, which is we need to make sure that the AI is trained with proper data and not only experiential data, but actual science-based data. We need to make sure that the app is HIPAA compliant. It has all the privacy and security technicality behind to be able to make this an app that is safe for women to use, and that we ensure that the whole ecosystem is just a product that really helps women, and like any medical person or product should be do no harm.
That's also important what you mentioned about the app. We didn't really talk a lot about that, but women get the results from the test through an app through which they can also monitor those different points of time when they're doing their test. No? So it also creates a user-friendly interface for them to see the data, see the results, and also share that. No?
Absolutely. So the idea is that once she takes the test with a simple snapshot, takes a picture with the phone, then the app aggregates their health history with the results from the test and starts creating a record where she can monitor these changes. Because we also have to mention that at this stage, it depends a lot of women's lifestyle. So for example, if I'm an athlete, my right and good cortisol levels could be higher than someone that has a desk job, and both can be okay. But then we need to calibrate that for that person. And that's what the app would do. Then we are able to see how each hormone impacts each other. So we know that even though cortisol is a hormone that is not considered a female hormone or is not specific to this group age, it does have a very big impact with other female hormones per se, and vice versa. So with this, we're able to track those changes and then provide a personalized plan that includes recommendations on supplementation, nutrition, exercise, or lifestyle changes.
It's fantastic. And especially that personalization that, as you mentioned, depending on their lifestyle, they have different levels. It's incredible. But now I think you're building an incredible product and an incredible solution. But of course, I would love now to learn about the people behind it. So I have the pleasure to talk to both of you today. How exactly did both of you got together? What's the origin story behind your partnership?
I had co-founded a company prior, and it was for diagnostics for the developing world. But I was always interested in women's health because I had my oldest daughter who was born with a heart defect, which had to be surgically rectified. And it was because I was not immunized against rubella. And that really got me into thinking about women's health. And so in my previous company, we made diagnostics where women could be tested to see whether they're immunized so that their babies could be born without any birth defects because of immunization. So that got me into women's health. And through that, I met someone in Singapore who was helping me raise money. And she then met Mayra and so introduced me to Mayra and said, hey, I've got this person who's interested in doing women's health. Would you be interested? And of course, I jumped at the opportunity because anything with women's health is definitely of interest to me. And when she talked about perimenopause and menopause, I thought that would be like a perfect way to do this. And she wanted, she thought I would bring my expertise, which would be in the biotech part, to developing the tests. And, ultimately, we want to make all these tests, if we can, through saliva, not have some through urine, some through saliva. But that's the next phase of our growth as a company. But for now, we're just using what we have out there. So that's how I got in touch with Mayra, and we had our first meeting in LA, which was a nice meeting point because I'm from San Francisco, she's from Mexico, of course lives in Singapore, and then we met in West Hollywood, actually.
Mexican restaurant.
At a Mexican restaurant, yes. And that's how we got started, and it's been a good ride ever since.
Starting a partnership at a Mexican restaurant is the best recipe for success.
Absolutely.
It was a vegan Mexican restaurant, so that was a very good restaurant. Good choice, Sarita.
So you got together, you found these common interests and building these. And now, how has the team evolved since then? I heard you're also working with different partners. Who are the people involved in this big endeavor that you have?
I was just going to say, as with all companies, we start with raising money. And that's the first thing we did. And, we got pre-seed, and that's given us a little bit of bandwidth to go ahead. And we obviously will be looking for more money once our not clinical trial, but our trial is done. I don't want to say clinical, but our trial is done, which should take place by the end of the month. And I think it puts us in a much better position to raise the value of the company as well as to further fundraise. So I think that's where we are at the moment. Mayra, carry on.
Because we were bootstrap at the beginning and raising capital was a challenge. I think, first of all, it's an overlooked area. Second of all, everybody asks you for traction, and it's difficult to have traction when you have a health tech. So you can't really treat a health tech like you treat a SaaS product. It's very different. So getting an MVP that works, it's tricky and it could take years. So we got a bit of lucky. But also what we found in our journey, going back to your question on the team, is that we found so many people that are passionate and that were willing to support in one way or another. So we do have a board of advisors that have been involved, including our advisor on diagnostics and saliva testing in the UK. We have another one in San Francisco also in diagnostic. We have a couple of people, former FDA, that has been advising us as well. We have 3 or 4 doctors that are focused either from reproductive health, OBGYN, naturopathics, alternative medicine. So in different ways of looking at the problem. We have a psychologist. We have a former head of creative shop for Meta as well. My ex-boss from Adidas, who was the VP of brand for Southeast Asia and Pacific. We also have a former researcher for Google. So we started finding all of these resources that in one way or another they supported. We also had a couple of ladies helping us with marketing and social media. So we are a small team, I would say, but we have had a lot of support from interested people in the topics, passionate really about women's health.
You know how we spoke about this being really a women's problem, but it's also really a family problem. As Mayra had mentioned, it's also really a partner, whoever the partner is also involved, because, it does create a bit of tension. It does create a bit of like, why are you behaving like this today? That sort of thing. So we have also come up with a card game for people to identify and help them understand to understand their partners better. Let's put it that way. So this card game is like it's a fun tool to see where the person is at and how the partner can be supportive or what's going on. So I think that's a really neat thing, which I'm very proud of. So I think, Mayra, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you are already about to launch it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it should be available in the next couple of months. We're going to do a pre-launch in about a month. So keep a watch on it. It's a fun, engaging way to have a conversation with your partner about this new stage in life.
And think about myself with my wife, also with my daughter in the future. This is a big family topic where I think also men have a role to play, in terms of understanding what it means, understanding how to support as well their partners through this phase. It's fantastic. And if I understand correctly, Sarita, you're primarily the scientist, leading the technology development part, while Mayra, you're primarily the business mind behind the company. Is that how you're splitting, or what's the role of each of you have?
Yes, it's exactly correct. So I'm taking care of the science. Mayra is doing the rest of it, I want to say. But as we said, I think we make a good team, and I think we complement each other well. And I think we've understood each other well and how we should work together. So I think that's worked out really well.
And now please walk us through what are some of the key priorities for the next 12 months. I think you already mentioned you have these big launch coming with the card games. There's other additional tests that you're developing. So what are some of the big things that are coming up in the following months?
So I think the first important thing is to complete the study, which we have started and initialized, and I would like to get that done. And after that, it would be, as with any company, we will look at the next round of financing, which I think is very crucial to take us to the next step. So I think in the next 6 months, we envision that the study and the compiling of the data and all will take a month or two. And then after that, we would like to start with the next round of financing. But in the meanwhile, I'm also working in the background to try and get the other tests developed for saliva. This is what's happening on my end. And I think Mayra is busy, with venture capitalists and trying to raise money and awareness, I must say as well.
Awareness. I think awareness is a big topic, and a lot of probably where they invested will go along with R&D. I think we underestimate the power of awareness. And ultimately, our goal is to launch by the end of the year.
And what is the profile of, let's say, investors, partners that you're looking for?
Women's health is a very specialized topic. It's not niche, even though they put us as niche. It's not niche. It's 50% of the world population, but it is a very specialized topic. So we're looking for partners in general, both investors, but also partners who understand the topic, are passionate about the topic, and are able to support us financially, but also in terms of commercial development to get this product to market. And why do I say specialized is we really need to incubate this product and this project to be able to support women.
It's a topic not many investors understand very well, but there are few who get it. And I think the way I see it, it's an opportunity which I think is going to be huge for people to understand. And, as Mayra said, half the population is going to go through this. The audience is huge. And we want to also reach places where the developing world, where there's lots of numbers, as well as people where, again, it's not been talked about, but I think it'd be very helpful. So I think making a change also for in that respect and, having an impact, I think will be very important as well.
And from a region or geographic perspective, it seems that it could be investors, partners, pretty much from all over the world. Because also you have a very international setup as a company.
Yeah, so it can be anyone. And I think we have some investors right now from the US, some from Singapore. And so it truly is a global topic. It's a truly global project, which I think it could be funded by anyone.
Unfortunately, we're reaching the end of our conversation, but I think you're building, a fantastic venture, tackling a big problem, building a fast growth, also complex product because of the nature of the problem that you're addressing. But I would love just to finalize our conversation to get your best advice for other aspiring founders that would love to follow the similar steps as what you're doing in terms of building a fast growing, high potential venture. What will be the best advice from each of you?
I just say, follow your passion. When you're passionate about something, it will work. So just, give it your best shot. Passion is everything. And I think, as I've said before, I'm really passionate about women's health. And I think that's got me to where I am today. I'm very proud of the first company we made, which really helped a lot of people, in the developing world. And I think this has an even bigger potential because it can reach half the population. And so I'm really excited about where the future will take us.
And Mayra, anything to add from your side?
I'll drop in a little bit of realistic expectations. But what I mean with that is it's really tough. And Sarita and I talk about it all the time. It's really tough. And like Sarita is saying is, if your heart is in the right place, it's much easier to go about it. But it's all about just sticking with it, perseverance, determination, because, it's a difficult road, but I think the love for the outcome is what keeps you going.
The only thing I can say is every time I've pitched, it's like, and investors have said, you invest in the founders, right? Because you see the passion, you see that determination to try and make something work. And that's what I meant. Let that come through and let that shine through. And I think that's really the key to getting the money and the key to kind of progressing. So, and of course, hitting your milestones when you can.
100%. It's all about the team. It's all about the people, especially in early stages. Then.
Absolutely.
So, Mayra, Sarita, thank you very much for this fantastic conversation. You have big plans ahead, and I will be very much looking forward to see how you evolve in the future. And of course, also celebrating your success and milestones moving forward. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And thanks to you for joining us today. Please remember to subscribe via your favorite podcast app to be notified about new episodes and share with us your feedback. We would love to hear from you. Thank you also to the Maxpreneurs team, Valeria Morel, Hector Barragan from Hyper Voltage, Francisco Jaimes, Pamela Elizalde, Katia Cruz, Rocío Marroquín. I am Sergio Chavez. See you next time.